I've got a list of things I really should get done every day that totals up to more than 24 hours. Sleep, exercise, shower, shave, brush, floss, commute, work, cook, clean, read, write, time with the kids, coursework or training exercises, lather, rinse, repeat. On top of that, I always have unplanned for near-term tasks that arise that if I don't give them my attention within the next few days, there's going to be consequences. Find out why the check engine light came on, call the landlord about the furnace, follow up with the doctor why the meds they prescribed have only partially helped with the laryngitis. That reminds me, my doctor says I have natural causes. Should I be worried? There are recurring but important things I need to get done at least every week, month, quarter, year that go beyond the daily to-do list, like laundry or grocery shopping and taking out the trash, mowing the lawn and paying the bills and getting haircuts for me and the kids, planning birthday parties. Thank goodness those only come once every few years. And then there's the non-recurring events that still merit your attention, like weddings and graduations and funerals. At least those should be non-recurring for any given person, right? I mean, I suppose someone might get married more than once, but if they have more than one funeral, they've got some explaining to do. There's clubs and activities like the PTA meetings, band rehearsals, meetings with my parole officer, poker night. Knitting night. Yeah, knitting club. If you're single and you're so inclined, you may want to find someone to date and then date. If you're married, and you probably want to find someone to date, but regardless, you should spend time with your spouse. Am I right? And what about life goals? When do I make time to learn that instrument, find or create that ideal job, date Scarlett Johansson? Sorry, Colin. Polish and publish that novel, learn how to edit videos, cruise Alaska while there's still glaciers to see, build a nest egg for a retirement, bathe in a geyser of my enemy's blood, learning how to sing, achieve enlightenment, and then sell it to the highest bidder. Never mind doing it all. How am I going to manage to get any of this done? Welcome to the INRIS Files, presenting thoughts on culture, history, and the human condition from a very specific Generation X point of view. My parents straddled the border between America's so-called silent generation and the baby boomers. They did the things that many of their North American age peers did. My father served in the military during the Vietnam War era. He married kind of on the youngish side, as did my mother after she dropped out of college with her MRS degree. My father worked a trade to support his family while my mother raised kids and learned how to cook. My parents occasionally tried their hand at starting a small business, although that usually didn't work out. And my mom entered the workforce, like many moms of her generation, to help make ends meet. There was always work, and there was always doing their best to raise their kids. There were frequently side jobs and second jobs, or attempts to launch a business, plus family obligations, with their own siblings and cousins, and, as I noted above, the car and home repairs, the holiday shopping, the doctor visits, and spending time in long lines at the DMV. There was appointment television, something you young whippersnappers know nothing about, and get-togethers with friends. And I remember when a toy would break, or we needed some new object assembled, my father would say he would get to it soon. It was on his list. His list became famous as that Schrodinger's field where projects went into suspended animation, perpetually in a state of done and not done, until finally they either resolved back into reality as a completed effort, or disappeared entirely into the black hole of forgotten tasks. Is my generation really any busier than theirs? I'm not so sure. I mean, I do have friends today who will work on their cars on their own when they need a new fuel pump or new springs, but for the most part, the check engine light for Generation X means taking the car into the shop and dropping it off while we move on to the next things on our list. Back in the day, if your car needed service and you were part of the working class, that meant you were more likely than not going to be the person to take that engine apart and replace the exhaust manifold. Sure, there were house painting companies back when my parents were raising kids, but like most folks in the working class, it was my father and sister and I who trudged up the ladders to slather on that new coat of paint on the house. So yeah, middle-class American families among the older baby boomers likely had just as much of a struggle as middle-class families of Generation X when it comes to trying to get done all the things that needed to be done. And yet, my father when he was in his early to mid-50s, was let go as a plant manager and found himself in that no man's land where folks in their 50s seem to still find themselves today, at least in the US. Employers would love to hire all that experience, but even more, they want the lower price tag of some fresh-faced kid out of college. It took a couple of years for my father to replace the income he used to command, and this time it was because he managed to start building a small business that found traction and finally took off. Really took off. But I remember visiting during this fallow period. I'd graduated from college and was living in a city a few hundred miles away. I'd come to town to see my parents and a few friends of mine from my younger days, and I still remember very clearly how he was inspecting his scuba equipment prior to putting it away, and we were talking about how he was going to be testing for his certification for deep water diving using something called nitrox. "How did you get into this?" I asked. Well, it turns out he had always wanted to get into scuba diving. I mentioned that I didn't recall that. Well, yes, after a while, with all the demands of raising a kid in his early career, he just never had the time, and he figured that he would likely never have the time. He never mentioned it because it was something he had figured he'd never get back to. But now the kids had flown. His work life was reduced to reading the want ads and sending out his resume a few times a week, and given that my mom's pay was enough to keep the lights on for the time being, he had enough free time to actually take a stab at it. And it was fun and invigorating. And there were so many interesting places for him to dive, not just locally, but also when they visited their friends scattered all over the northeastern United States. It was a whole new side of him I'd never seen before, and it was thrilling to catch a glimpse of it. That was when my mom spoke up. "You see," she said, "you can do it all. You just can't do it all at once." It's a lesson that has really stuck with me. Really, looking back on my life, it doesn't feel like I've gotten a lot done. But there was one occasion when I was writing in my morning pages, when I broke down my life into decades and wrote down important people in my life at that time, places I had been, things I'd been doing, and I realized that I'd actually done quite a bit. I'm learning video editing because I wanted to make these videos for you kids. I'm playing music again, and it doesn't matter that I'm terrible at it. I'm having fun, and so are the 50 and 60-somethings I play with in my band. I'm even kinda good about the songs I'm writing, even if my skills as a singer and a musician don't necessarily do them justice. On any given day, I feel mired in the morass of the unconquerable to-do list, and yet my life is anything but stagnant. I'm building new, more adult relationships with my kids, I'm meeting new people, and I'm trying new things. This isn't because of some grand midlife second wind. Far from it. I feel as sluggish and dragged down as ever. Rather, it's simply because I keep on keeping on. I never finish all that's on my to-do list, but I get done what I can, and occasionally even sneak in a few of the things that I want. And over a lifetime, it adds up. Maybe you can do it all, just not all at once. That's just some food for thought from the INRIS Files. What do you think? Are you feeling stuck? Are you feeling like you're kicking all the butts and taking all the names? And what do you see when you take a good look at the distance you've traveled so far? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, and please be kind when you engage in the conversation. Be sure to click like if you want to see more videos like this, and subscribe if you'd like to be alerted about them when I post. Thank you again for checking out the INRIS Files, and we'll see you again next time.